Orbán Viktor said yesterday that the document is actually a Ukrainian budget and unacceptable for Hungary. Why? I will ask this from Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's look at some points separately. The plan says that 100 billion euros will be allocated to Ukraine, which is 5% of the total budget. At the same time, you and the government said that 20% will go to Ukraine. What is the significance of these two estimates?
Budgeting is a great science. You have to be able to read not only what is written in it, but also what is hidden behind the lines. Various experts, not only in Hungary but also abroad, have identified and summed up the decisions of the secret committee. According to some experts, 20% of the total budget can be allocated to Ukraine and 25% to other experts. I can say with great confidence that at least 20% of this budget will be allocated to Ukraine. At least 20% of the European people's money will go to Ukraine.
At the same time, the whole cake will be bigger, as the total budget will increase from 1,200 billion euros to 2,000 billion euros. Why is it not possible for Ukraine to get more, or is it possible to get more for other purposes as well?
If we only look at the financial aspects, we have to see that 10–12% of the total budget allocated to Ukraine will be allocated to the EU. We are against this practice. We think it is not a good practice to allocate money to the EU. But this is a decision, a question, which Hungary alone cannot prevent. This practice has been going on for a long time. Now that there is a new German government, they are also raising the bar. They do not want to allocate more similar loans. But what has already happened has already happened. 10–12% of the total budget allocated to Ukraine will be allocated to the EU. In total, 30–35% of the total budget allocated to Ukraine will be allocated to funds that were not included in the previous budget. So even if they raise the budget by a few percent, 30% of the total budget allocated to Ukraine will be allocated to the EU. 30% of the total budget allocated to Ukraine will be allocated to funds that were not included in the previous budget. This means that they have to pay for it. Otherwise, they will not get anything back. This is why they are angry, dissatisfied, angry, outraged. Everyone is one of the members of the EU, depending on the level of bloodshed in the European Union.
We are talking about huge amounts of thousands of billions. What would the Hungarian people, families and pensioners feel if this budget was implemented? In addition to the fact that Brussels would also ban Russian energy imports from 2028.
The biggest problem with the budget is not only the EU budget, but also the national budget, that it does not have a clear strategic basis. If we do not know what the budget is for, the budget cannot be good. First of all, we have to answer the question of what goals we want to achieve with the budget. This is true for the budget of Hungary, but it is also true for the budget of the EU. This question is not clarified, or if it is clarified, it is not explained. The only obvious goal of this budget is to take up Ukraine in the European Union and to separate the necessary financial resources for this. The other part of the budget will be given to Ukraine. However, there is no decision that Ukraine will be a member of the European Union. There is no such decision, so it is not right to separate money for this. We will divide this money among the EU member states and their citizens. Then, if Ukraine becomes a member of the EU, we can talk about how to give them money. But this will not happen in my life. This is not in the foreseeable future. However, if we do not take up Ukraine in the EU, which I think would be right, then we would have to form a different kind of relationship, which is not a membership relationship, but a cooperation relationship. This could also have financial implications, but we would have to define the basis of such a cooperation in this budget. I just want to say that we do not know from this budget how the budget makers, this committee, imagine the future of European economy. And this uncertainty is not only in Ukraine's case, but they also lose money from agriculture, for example. The question is, do they lose money because the previous system is considered to be a bargain? Do they lose money because they want to convert to something else? Do they lose money because the European Food Party and agriculture do not consider each other as important? Or why? And if they lose money because they think differently about the future of European agriculture than we have thought together so far, then what is the thing they think? If so far many million farmers have lived in Europe from agriculture and we have supported their new work, then if we do not support them in the future, what will happen to them? What will they make a living from? What do they earn their bread from? Where will they work? So it is not possible to put a knife in the flesh of a living person and think that everything will be fine, because the patient will die. So this budget would destroy the European Union. I do not think this budget will survive the next year either. Either the committee will have to take a visible step back, or it will have to step back step by step and rewrite it. I see this from the reactions of the European countries. They will not accept this budget from the Brussels bureaucracy.
By the way, the biggest upheaval so far has been the reorganization of agricultural support. The regional-based support would practically disappear above a certain level. What do you think would be the effect of this on the Hungarian farmers? Because the committee argues that this is how they support the young farmers: sustainability, competition.
So the European Committee should not realize this at all. Instead, it should say that we are allocating this amount of money to agriculture, and we will get it to the farmers as simply as possible. Let's say the system is not terribly bureaucratic. We will get it to the farmers as simply as possible. This would be the thing. And in contrast, it brings together the hocus-pocus of the Brussels bureaucracy, pushes it here, puts it there, brings it together. So when I see this, I have made a few budgets, and I have seen budgets from the opposition in Hungary. When in the budgets there are such complicated here and there, influential circles, above, below, right, left, then you can know that there is something fishy about it. And here too, it is about the fact that the committee has no idea about the future of the European agricultural economy. And apparently, in order for Ukraine to be able to give money, it will cut off all possible previous loans, in order for Ukraine to be able to group it. In addition, the Ukrainian membership is unacceptable in this budget, because it is like migration. So if you let it in at once, you can't get more out of it. So this is why Hungary recommends a gradual approach, that of course we have to work together, since it is about a large and significant neighboring country, so we have to work together with Ukraine, but not to let in and give them such rights as we have within us. Because, for example, you can't expel a country from the Union. Few people know this, but this is such a contractual construction. If a country is taken up at once, it can be depressed. Sometimes they even scratch our navel, but it can't be expelled. If we take up a huge country, its size is also enormous. We don't know how many people are on it, but we're talking about tens of millions of countries. We can't expel them. From then on, their economic problems become our economic problems. So it's not like there's a country outside the Union that has problems, and we should help it. But it legally says that my problem is your problem, because you have a problem, because we are in the same economic sphere. And then you give the money, and that's it. Then you have to give it. The money will go there for decades. I think it's hopeless, because the Ukrainian economy is not in a position to modernize with a membership-based legal relationship, and with that money, it's still far from it. It's not prepared for membership.
How difficult will it be to change in this current proposal, and what political forces are behind it in Brussels and back home?
A very exciting period starts at a time like this. I don't think the listeners can even imagine it. So here, thousands of people are now covering these pages, dividing, subtracting, overwriting, and so on. And then these 27 countries start talking to each other, and they start talking to the committee, and a very complicated negotiation process starts in the hope that at the starting point of the budget, we will be able to make changes that will be acceptable to all 27 member states. Because at the very end, we have to make a unanimous decision on this budget. I've seen more than that. It's not the first EU budget in my life, but the third. So I know this process, I know this path, this jungle through which we have to maneuver ourselves. We know who we're going to negotiate with. I know roughly which countries our interests fall into together, and which countries are opposed, and who we have to agree with, so that at the end, a budget that can be accepted by Hungary can be created. But there's a bigger problem here, and that is that if I read this budget, then it's a budget of hopelessness. So if someone, at least their leader, is struggling with it, or is struggling with it to the end, then they don't see an optimistic. He is on the list of 3 Ukrainian leaders responsible for the forced secession.
The Hungarian government asked about this in the case of Josef Sebesin. What is the chance that this Hungarian request will be fulfilled?
Well, we surprised in Brussels. Our foreign minister visited there in the past few days, and they thought, like the people of Brussels, because they heard about this bilateral conflict, that a Hungarian citizen, a European citizen, was killed by the Ukrainians during the forced secession. And they obviously thought that Hungary would not let this go unpunished. But we did not choose this path, but we presented the report of the European Council on Human Rights Security. This is a serious international document, which was recently made public, in which a special chapter is summarized on the brutal human rights violations committed during the Ukrainian forced secession. So in Brussels, we do not say that there is a Hungarian case here, but we say that there is a European case here, which is not only noticed by Hungary because the forced secessionists killed a citizen of the state, but a European problem, which is also felt by others. And those who feel it have collected, this is an organization from Strasbourg, by the way, they have collected the relevant information, they have organized it, and they have given it an acceptable value. And it says exactly what the Hungarian government says. It is not about individual cases, but about a practice. In fact, human hunting is going on. It is called a forced secession, but people are being hunted down. Groups of trusted figures who are thought to be able to join the Ukrainian army immediately. And if it does not go well, then it goes badly. And in the meantime, brutal atrocities are being committed, as this document makes it clear. And only at the end we said that, and you know, our dear friends in Brussels, by the way, the last victim was a Hungarian citizen, who is also a citizen of your state, because he is a citizen of the EU. So we are attacking from here We are not advocating the two-way relations of the Ukrainian-Hungarian. We are recommending that the European Union should put a ban, a punishment in view of this. It should not go without saying it, but it should impose some kind of sanction. For example, we should put responsible Ukrainian leaders on the list of sanctions. For example, Hungary also banned them from Hungary yesterday. But this is not because of the Hungarians, but because we have a general practice in our neighbor which is unacceptable. This is our direction of attack. We will also gain an advantage from it. And what can be introduced as a two-way sanction, Hungary has already introduced it. At the same time, Brussels did not only not respond to this Hungarian request, but also did not respond to the case at all.
What could be the reason for this hearing?
Embarrassing. Of course, the brutality is more embarrassing for those who are affected, so there are victims, but it is also embarrassing from the point of view of the Brussels bureaucrats. Well, nothing else can be heard in Brussels. I hold my head out of my hair, as if Ukraine has made fantastic progress in the field of human rights, in the field of justice, in the fight against corruption. So the Brussels leaders are talking about Ukraine as a country that has already done everything to make itself useful. And it has already become useful. It has knocked on the door. And there are some obstacles. For example, these Hungarians, they do not want to open the door where it is, and evidently provoke the Ukrainians. So they think that Ukraine has not only reached, but has already exceeded the European jurisdiction. If someone knows Ukraine because, say, his neighbor, so we Hungarians know, this is nothing compared to reality. And in general, whether a country's justice system is now ready or not, whether its tax system is ready or not, whether the modes of economic dispute are European or not, this can be debated, understood so or so, but that they beat a person on the brain because he did not want to intervene, or he thought that he did not comply with the rules according to which he had to be a soldier. And they did not arrest him and put him under a legal procedure, but they beat him on the brain. There is nothing to say about this. This is a clear denial that this country evidently was not prepared to accept the member states of the European Union. And that's why Brussels should be angry with itself if it raises this issue. And it will not raise this issue on its own, because Brussels will not raise this issue on its own. European values, European human rights declarations and principles would demand that the Brussels bureaucrats raise this issue on their own and investigate it. But they do not do it. They want to kick it off the table because it is a country that has long been a member of the EU.
The reactions of Ukraine and Hungary are also interesting because yesterday's ban, for example, Kyiv reacted by rejecting Hungary's manipulations and does not tolerate such disrespect. And in Hungary, we also hear that the government is asking for evidence of brainwashing. The president of the Hungarian Peter Attis party said that he does not want to participate in the campaign built on the death of Joseph Sebastian. How do you evaluate these reactions of Ukraine and Hungary?
As we did in Brussels, the case of Joseph Sebastian is important to us Hungarians because he is one of us. In fact, Joseph Sebastian is us. We are a Hungarian national community, regardless of where the state borders were drawn. After all, we are only one nation, so this is important to us. This is a matter of heart and conscience. But as I said, we do not have to be afraid of everything. We have to be afraid of the Human Rights Report. And we have to tell the TISAs, we have to tell the Ukrainian Secret Service and the Ukrainian diplomacy that you are not arguing with Hungary. A European organization wrote in black and white that this is a practice and this practice must be recorded, especially because a Hungarian case is the last victim of this. So we do not have to prove the Hungarian case, because the facts speak for themselves, but we have to put forward the human rights report, the European report, in which the practice is written down, not by Hungarians, but by non-Hungarian reporters. So you can't accuse the contractors with two-sided or Hungarian-oriented acceptance. This is a sad thing, but this is not new in Hungarian history. There are parties which, in a Hungarian-Ukrainian or Hungarian foreign dispute, always give the truth to the foreigners. The Tisza Party is part of this tradition. The DK is part of this tradition. These are parties that can never be true for Hungarians, because abroad there is always something higher. We have different, more valuable points of view, and we do not have to argue with foreigners, but we have to order ourselves. We have to follow them. We have to see the pattern in them. We have to accept the references from there. This is a different world. So the world of the Hungarian opposition and its relationship to Brussels or any other imperial center, formerly to Moscow, to Washington, and now to Brussels, is a subordinate relationship in which a Hungarian can never be true. This is the burden we should be free of. This has been pressing us for more than 100 years, that our heads are being hit, and we say that you Hungarians can never be true. And there are parties that believe this. They accept it. They live from the fact that such orders are being issued. And there are national parties that we are proud of, and we say that we are the Hungarians and we are right, and we will prove it, and we will fight for it, and we will defend our interests. So we can see the impact of this debate in a concrete matter.
Let's talk about Hungarian economic issues. You said that the EU spending is the spending of survival. In an earlier interview, you said that Hungary has ambitions from an economic point of view. Here is the Home Start Plus program, which targets young people. Those young people whose parents burned themselves at the beginning of the 2000s with the printing of currency notes, so they have a pretty bad experience. How can we convince them that it is worth investing in currency notes and housing?
This is a foreign currency. What was the problem with currency notes? The problem with currency notes was that the banks and the government of Györcsényi tricked people into this currency construction by saying that if you buy currency in forints, you pay a high interest rate, and if you buy it in euros, you pay a low interest rate. Of course, people are not stupid. They think that a low interest rate is better than a high interest rate, and this is a reasonable suggestion by the banks and the government. And no one told them clearly, although I tried to do the opposite, that you run the risk of a currency process. So it may seem that this credit is cheap now because the currency-euro currency process is favorable to us, but the currency-euro currency process can be ruined. And it is not only in Hungary that it is ruined, but also from our independent international economic processes. And you expose yourself to such a risk that if the currency-euro currency process is ruined, then your debt may suddenly increase even more. They did not tell them this. There is a dispute about who said it, as to which credit-generating bank and which judiciary. We have saved hundreds of thousands of families, thanks to György Matolcsi, who then suggested, as the president of the EG Bank, how to evacuate people from devisa-based loans to forint-based loans. But this is a different story now. Now this is a forint-based loan with a 3% fixed interest rate for 25 years, with a maximum 10% self-empowerment, and the purchase value of the apartment is 150 million HUF in the case of a house. This is a security loan for the person who buys it. And I would assure young people that they have to decide. Of course, they have to decide. We can only open a door but they have to decide that if they want to live somewhere, and they do not live in a rich family where the parents buy their own apartment, but they have to solve their future and home creation on their own, then it is better to buy a house and pay the demolition fee, which the Hungarian government has reduced with the support of Kamat. And this is better than paying the same amount for a low-rent apartment, because it does not matter that I give the rental fee to the owner and I get an apartment for a month, or I have to pay the demolition fee for a part of the property that will later become my own property. It is worth thinking about this. I feel like a breakthrough. We see numbers that show how much you can save in the case of a young person on the state-supported Kamat, which can mean many tens of thousands of forints, depending on how much money they take. The mathematical model calculations are ready. We are at the most important stage. So I can say for sure that it is not just about an opportunity, not just a thought, but it has been worked out in detail with the banks and the construction industry. There is a lot to teach young people.
If we talk less about the construction industry, how does the government calculate the impact of the construction industry?
There are mathematical models. I have to be careful. If you have 10,000 homes, you can bring 1% increase in GDP. You can easily build 50,000 homes. However, this construction is not only for new houses, but also for used ones.
Let's bring another topic here. Kapu Tibor is back. He was a researcher on the Pacific Ocean. What is the significance of this successful mission?
I listen to scientists who talk about the experiments that Kapu Tibor carried out with our new hero. It is hard to say whether it is true or not. Scientists prove that these were important and valuable researches. But I look at it from another point of view. I read somewhere that there are 12 nations in the world that can tell you that a man was sent to space. In this 12th, we Hungarians are also there. If this has already been mentioned, let's practice justice and dignity. Of course, everyone talks about Kapu Tibor, as they talked about Bertan Farkas 41 years ago. But there was also a second man. We are not depicting one astronaut at this time, but two. One astronaut is not an astronaut. So whatever happens, we will be with them. There is a second Hungarian astronaut whose name does not ring a bell. He did everything. He is an intelligent and great man. His name is Gyula Szerényi. He did not go to space, but he is still being recognized.
I asked Prime Minister Viktor Orbán about the next EU budget plan, the ban on forced migrations, and the effects of the Home Start program.